As someone who's attended a lot of these meetings, what advice do you have for an innovator as he or she prepares to meet with the FDA at this stage in the process?
Well, there's a lot of things that have to be considered, and I would start with the timing of the meeting. It's not necessary to only have one meeting with FDA. In fact, it's preferable to have more than one meeting if you can, but you need to consider that FDA is not going to allow you to have an unlimited number of meetings. So you have to choose carefully when you think it's appropriate to meet with FDA, whether it's to discuss early stage information such as animal testing or even pre-animal testing, or whether you want to wait until you're ready to begin discussing a clinical protocol. But in any event, you have to figure on approximately 6 weeks from the time you make the request until FDA will be willing to schedule a meeting with you. There are also the dynamics of the meeting to consider. A lot of companies want to go to a meeting and spend the hour that FDA usually allots talking only about their product. I think it's critical to talk about your product or the study that you're conducting, but to leave ample time to get FDA talking as well, to get FDA to ask questions and to share with you their initial thoughts and concerns about things such as study size, design, endpoints, things of that nature. It's also important to consider who will attend the meeting for the company. And I don't think companies need to worry too much about how many people they bring as long as they're not going to overfill a room, but it's more important to think about who will attend. So you want people from the company who are knowledgeable about the product, but you also want to bring in outside representatives like clinicians, for example, who can lend objectivity and speak to the disease state or the need for the type of product. And keep in mind that these days FDA always brings their own clinicians to the meetings. Companies need to consider, too, what type of meeting to have, an informal versus a formal one, which I mentioned earlier. And then they need to also focus on the agenda for the meeting. Given that the meeting is likely to last only 60 minutes, what is critical to talk about at the meeting and how much can you cover? And the types of things that need to be considered for the meeting, of course, depend upon whether it's early stage before you develop your clinical protocol or whether it's to talk about the actual protocol itself. But things such as statistical considerations, the endpoints for a study, the size of a study, all of those things should be discussed and on the agenda with FDA. And then finally, it's important to know before you go to the meeting whether there is any FDA guidance that's been issued, either formally in terms of an FDA guidance document, or maybe less formally in terms of information that FDA makes available at medical meetings or that companies themselves talk about at medical meetings.